Hey, my name's Ian Bagley. You're watching the NBA Exchange with Dexter Henry.
What's up, everybody? Dexter Henry here for the Friday edition of the NBA Exchange. Just started a little bit later than we used to. Had a couple of technical difficulties, but we've got that squared and out of the way. If you were with us yesterday live around noon, we did the NBA trade deadline show. It was a busy one. There was a lot to talk about. We obviously got off air before the trade deadline expired or was over at 3 o'clock. So today we got to recap it because it was a busy day. There was a lot going on. And so to talk about that, I thought there was nobody better to bring on than my guy, my Caribbean brother, Moke Hamilton of basketballnews.com. Moke, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, Dex? I'm doing good, man. Still trying to recover from that trade deadline.
I know, man.
It's
I know.
busy, man.
It was busy. I know it was really busy. Did you get enough rest around it? Were you fully immersed, like just watching Twitter all day, seeing what people will update? How did the trade deadline go for you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all the above, and then even the days leading up to it, I mean, I don't want to make it sound I'm not, Shams or Woj or one of those guys, but I was making a few phone calls trying to find out what people knew. I want to say on Monday and Tuesday is when people that I knew at the Nets organization, nobody really involved in basketball ops, but there were some people that were kind of starting to get a sense that they might actually consider doing this. And that, obviously that was the news of the day.
Yep.
And just from what I heard and what I've come to understand, I don't think the Nets themselves knew for a fact that they were actually going to do that trade until like the 11th hour. But I know we're going to talk about that. Don't want to jump ahead too far or anything. But yeah, it was a very interesting week.
Yeah, it was a very interesting week and very busy. And we don't have to jump ahead too far at all. We're going to get right into it. The biggest news of yesterday was obviously James Harden and Ben Simmons switching teams. Now, this had been talked about for some time, Moke. People had spoke about it, thought it could happen. Rumors were out there that James Harden wanted out. Obviously, he did. We know Simmons did not want to play in Philly again. He gets moved. It was really about who was going to, give up the most or who was going to blink first in this. So the deal, Harden to the Sixers for Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. What did you think of the deal? You said you didn't really hear about this coming till the 11th hour. Were you shocked that it actually happened?
It's funny. For some reason, even though you kind of saw how it could make sense for both sides, I still was kind of shocked when it actually happened. When you saw the tweets and you saw, Chris Haynes, he kind of got wind that it was happening too. When you saw the top newsbreakers in the industry all coming out now and starting to say, like this thing might actually happen. You're like, wow, like, are they really going to do it? And then at that point, it's just a matter of what the deal finally ends up being. As far as how I feel about the trade, I think both teams win in the trade, to be perfectly honest with you. And, you don't often say that or see that in the NBA, but in this situation, I do think it's actually true. As far as the Nets are concerned, I think long term, I think Ben Simmons is just a better natural fit with Kyrie Irving and with Kevin Durant. Durant can kind of play on or off the ball. Kyrie, I think for the most part, is effective on it. And the marriage between him and James Harden, I mean, these guys only played 16 games together. Maybe if they had more of an opportunity. We once had the same concerns with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, right? Like, these guys both need the ball. How are they going to coexist? They kind of figured that out, Maybe James and Kyrie would have. Now, obviously, we won't have to ask ourselves that question anymore. At the end of the day, I think Ben Simmons is going to give that team another guy that can create off the dribble, another guy that can pass, that can make plays from the post. And overall, I just think that those 3 guys together are going to be able to live and play in harmony. So I like it for Brooklyn. From Philadelphia's standpoint, obviously, Ben was not playing for them. And now really for Philly, it's about trying to win a championship. It's about the team's collective ceiling. And even though we don't know if Harden will become the player that he was when we saw in Houston, their ceiling as a collective is just higher now. And I think when you're hunting for a championship, you're more concerned about that ceiling. So I like it for both teams, like I said.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's the rare case of you seeing two superstars getting traded for each other. You usually don't see that. And I do think it works out for both teams. Philly, I think, had to make this move to move on from Simmons. You couldn't have this drama go on any further. And so they did that. You talked about how you liked it. With Ben Simmons, I think a lot of people said this is a good basketball move. He could fit nicely with the Nets. He helps improve their defense a little bit. But are you concerned about how he might be offensively? And I don't want to speculate on the mental part of it too, which we've heard about some issues with him. But how do you think he fits offensively in this? Will he get the ball in his hands? Will he be playing more of the power forward spot? How do you see this fitting offensively for the Brooklyn Nets?
I think he can. I think he can do any of those things. I think that he can play with the ball. I think that he can create plays for the team with Andre Drummond there, with Seth Curry there. And then obviously we don't know if Joe Harris is going to be back. Well, I should say we don't know if he's going to be back at all, much less this season. But if they have some shooters out there, Cam Thomas, we got two Cams in New York now. So it's like you got to concentrate to get the right one. You know what I mean? But as far as, Thomas has shown that he can play. This guy can get buckets. So, at the end of the day, Dexter, basketball, I don't really think it's always just about, like, obviously these three guys, they need to close games together. So they do need to be able to play well together for 6-minute stretches at the end of games. But it's a 48-minute game. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, to win a championship, you need to have a rotation that consists of 9 or 10 guys that can play well together. And Ben Simmons can probably play with any other combination of 4 guys on Steve Nash's roster and be a positive contributor in some way. People are so focused about his limitations on the offensive end that they are just completely overlooking the gifts that he does have, right? And we spend so much time talking about him and his mental health and the fact that he passed up that open dunk at the end of the game. I mean, when you talk about a guy that can rebound the ball and get into the front court and deliver an assist for somebody, there's maybe 10 guys in the league that can do that as well as Ben Simmons can. And I think when you have offensive weapons like Kyrie Irving and like Kevin Durant, it's going to pay dividends. It all has to come together. That's the head coach's job. But I think, whether it be Steve Nash or somebody else, and I'm not trying to break no news, but I'm just saying, whether it be Steve Nash or somebody else, they're going to be able to figure out how to make it all work.
Yeah, they're gonna have to. How much of this, the success of it making it all work, also comes down to Kyrie, Moke, because having him available on the court as just another ball handler, somebody that can score a little bit, different levels, that's something Simmons really can't do. We know, like you said, what Simmons brings to the table. How much of this comes down to Kyrie and his availability to making this actually work?
I mean, a lot of it does. Obviously, for these guys to be able to achieve at a high level, they need to have Kyrie for more than 50% of their regular season games. Now, I will say this. It's a very, very interesting point that I literally just thought of 30 seconds ago. If you're the Nets, you're, at least as of right now, as of where we stand right now, you are actually in the rare occasion of not wanting home court advantage, right? So maybe this 10-game losing streak, maybe it's a part of the master plan. Because if you really think about it, if they enter the first round as the number 2 seed, what happens? You don't have Kyrie for 4 games, right? If you don't have the home court advantage, as long as you're not playing the Knicks in the first round, which I don't think is going to be happening. Sorry, Dexter. I'm sorry, man. We always got to find a way to
it's not
get the Knicks in there.
It's not happening. They're terrible right now. No, it's not happening.
Yeah, but no. I mean, in all seriousness, yeah. Obviously, they need Kyrie available. If they don't have home court advantage and things remain as they are in New York City today, that actually helps the Nets because now they only will be without Kyrie for 3 of those games. But anyway, Dexter, when I look at this trade and when I think about Ben Simmons and how he's going to coexist with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, I'm not really thinking so much about this season. You know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking in the future. And obviously, we hope that, the COVID indicators kind of remain where they are and that things continue to trend in a positive direction. So next year, maybe it won't be an issue, right? Whether or not Kyrie got vaccinated or not. That is our hope. But again, like I said, I'm thinking distant future, and I think that the Nets have a runway now. You know, they have a championship window. We do need to say Kyrie can opt out after this season and become a free agent.
That's a good point too. Yep.
It's something that a lot of people are not talking about or really paying attention to. But again, assuming he stays, I think that long term now these guys have a pretty good runway. Ben Simmons, 25 years old. It's hard to not like the trade for the Nets, in my opinion.
I spoke with some friends who were big Sixers fans yesterday, and this was before the trade happened, and they were like, look, we want Harden because we want to move on from the Simmons thing. We don't want to give up Maxey. We don't want to give up Thibault. The Sixers didn't have to give up either. But like I said, they gave up Seth Curry. They gave up Andre Drummond. They gave up draft picks. What do you think about how the Sixers did? Did they give up too much here, or was this the move that they had to make?
I think it's the move they had to make if they wanted James Harden specifically. Could they have traded Ben Simmons and found a way to get Tyrese Halliburton for themselves? Maybe they could have. Could they have found a way to get Domantas Sabonis? Maybe they could have. But is that really what you needed next to Joel Embiid? Particularly when Tyrese Maxey, I mean, this guy, I don't want to say he's arrived, but he definitely has emerged. He's played so well this season for Philadelphia that you kind of like, wait a minute, like, do we actually need Tyrese Halliburton? Like, you know, do we actually need a point guard? Can this guy not be the point guard that we thought we were missing? Like, Maxey has been that good this season. So if you're Philadelphia and you think maybe he is that dude, or maybe he can become that dude, well, then what becomes your next need? Your next need really becomes another alpha scorer that can take pressure off of Embiid, right? You don't want him to have to go out there and feel like he has to score 35 or 40 points every night to give the team a chance to win. That's not a situation you want Embiid to be in over the long term, especially because of the biological breakdowns. I just coined that term right now. The biological breakdowns that Embiid has had over the course of his career. So I think Harden filled a void for Embiid again, for the Sixers, again, looking at it through the lens of Embiid, reducing some of his workload, and the fact that, again, Dexter, when you start getting into the place where you're winning 50 games a year, 55 games a year, you start to think about your ceiling as a team, right? And sometimes it's better to take a risk that has the opportunity to yield a championship than to be a team like, say, the Portland Trailblazers that say, oh, you know, we're good just winning 52 games every year and losing in the first round. That's good enough for us. To me, Philadelphia making this trade is saying to Joel Embiid and to the fan base, that's not good enough. Like, we are shooting for the moon. At the end of the day, I think you got to respect that. The one other quick thing I'll add, Dexter, to that. Sure. For Philadelphia, what they spent some time doing the past week was trying to figure out if they'd be able to find a taker for Tobias Harris over the summer. Because for them, their plan B was to sign James Harden as a free agent this summer. But in order to do that, they would have had to find a way to clear out a whole bunch of money off of their cap. And it would have been nearly impossible to do without finding a home for Tobias Harris. So I do think there were some reports early this week about Tobias potentially being linked to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah,
my understanding of that was something that was being contemplated for the summer, because that's where the Rockets got their leverage from to muscle Brooklyn into making a deal. They said, hey, look, you don't have to trade James Harden to Philly right now, but if you don't, come summertime, we're going to send Tobias Harris, or we're going to send, you know, Matisse Thybulle or Andre Drummond or whoever it was. We're going to send this guy here. We're going to send this guy there. And they had to present to Brooklyn a route that Philadelphia had to clear the cap space to sign James Harden outright. So I say all that to say, part of the reason why I think it was the right move for Philadelphia, even though they gave up the 2 first-round picks, is if they didn't make the trade, it would have probably ended up costing them Tobias Harris and at least 1 or 2 other rotation players over the summer anyway. Right. Now, by making the trade, you got Tobias, you got Harden, and you have Embiid. And again, as a collective, I just think the team's ceiling is a lot higher. So that's why I like it for Philadelphia as well.
That's a good point, because they would have had to pay at some point to get off the money with Harris, and more teams had opened up having cap space, right? Detroit's expected to have major cap space. Indiana's expected to have major cap space now after their trades. Portland is another team. So now those teams, there are more options for Philly in the summer. So that kind of was some leverage they could have used against the Nets to say, hey, look, we're going to get this done one way or another. Either you get something now or you don't. What about,
Exactly.
I'll ask you about this. What about Harden? Two things about Harden. One, how he's looked this season, because he has not looked the same. If you've been watching the Nets when he played, he just hasn't looked the same. I know he's an all-star, but he hasn't looked the same. And the way he left, there's a lot of talk about, okay, is this Harden left again, another team. He wanted out. He got out of Houston, and people didn't like the way he handled that. Now he got out of Brooklyn. Some people didn't like the way he handled this. Do you feel like another trade here, is it a bad look for Harden? Does this tarnish his reputation in any kind of way? How do you think this impacts James Harden?
Well, I don't think that you can argue that. It certainly does. I actually spent a lot of time talking about this with my friends and with my dad yesterday. Whether true or not, or whether fair or not, we don't know what exactly it was that made James Harden decide that he wanted out of Brooklyn. But Dexter, he was there for 13 months. Like, he wasn't even there for 2 full seasons. Like, I feel like I've gone out on dates that lasted longer than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much of an opportunity do you really give it before you're like, hey, you know what? Like, this is not for me. And the fact that Brooklyn gave up so much for him, I mean, maybe that's not his problem. And maybe it's not something that he should be too concerned about. But at the end of the day, it is something that we as a basketball viewing public are going to look at. Like, we're going to look at this thing through that lens, and we're going to be like, man, you know, the Nets gave up. They moved heaven and earth to get this guy. And now look at what Jared Allen is doing. Look at what Karis LeVert is doing. Think about all the draft picks they gave up. And you only gave them 13 months after you clearly dogged it for the Houston Rockets for a time. It looks really bad on James Harden. But at the end of the day, you know, I think with pro athletes, we tend to judge them by standards that we wouldn't necessarily hold ourselves to if we were put in the same situation. And at the end of the day, you know, the ends justify the means, right? Like, if you're an employee and you're unhappy with your employment situation, you know, you and I, we have the benefit of just being able to go to our boss in a free market economy and saying, hey, you know what, this ain't really working for me. You know, I got an offer from this TV network. I got an offer from here. Hey, man, I'm out. You know, and if you're lucky, I'm going to give you 2 weeks notice. And sometimes people don't even do that, right? People pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm not coming to work today, right? James Harden can't do that. So if he has to do some things that make him the villain to get what he wants at the end of the day, I can understand if we look at him negatively for it, but I can also see the perspective like, hey, Ben Simmons is like, hey, if it costs me $19 million to find a new home, I'm cool with that, because that's what I want. That's kind of what James Harden did as well. So I'm not going to kill him too much, but I can understand why people would look at it and feel that kind of way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I haven't killed him too much, especially with all the reports we're hearing about how a lot of it was linked to Kyrie, and he wasn't happy with the fact that he wasn't playing, which I understand. If you feel like you're on a team and somebody's not all in, you might be a little bit pissed about that too, and you feel like you have to do some heavy lifting. I think that's understandable for a lot of us. I think you did a great job of explaining it in the regular workplace situations that many of us face that some of these pro athletes do not have. All right. We like to trade for both sides. Let's talk about some other trades. There were other trades that happened. This was
there was other trades? I thought that was like, I didn't even know there was other trades, man.
There were other trades. I know. It just everything was Harden and Simmons, man. You didn't hear anything else. I don't know about you, but the second most shocking trade of the day for me, where I was like, wow, I can't believe that happened. Wizards acquiring Kristaps Porzingis.
I'm with you. I was waiting
with
to
me
see
on
what
this.
You were gonna say.
Okay, so you're with me on this. I was shocked. Wizards get Kristaps Porzingis for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. Now, here's the thing, Moke. This was shocking to me because you thought Porzingis and Doncic were going to be hitched together, right? This was the thing that they were going to do. Also, Dinwiddie and Bertans have been terrible this year. Neither have been really good. in how they've played. You said you were shocked. Tell me why you were shocked and what you think of this deal.
Well, I mean, the reason why I was shocked, I think the main reason why everybody else was, Dexter, this came out of nowhere, and it's just a reminder that in the NBA, most of the trades that end up happening are the ones that you don't really hear about. This is something that we didn't hear about. It kind of came out of nowhere, even though we'd heard that Porzingis and Doncic, there were things to be desired there as far as that relationship was concerned. Obviously, Porzingis, the Mavericks invested a lot of money in him, but he is one of those players in the NBA that never met an injury he didn't like. He was like, oh, sprained ankle? Sure. I'll take that. Oh, what's that? Bone bruise? Okay, I'll take that too. Like, no problem, Like, there are guys out there like that. And unfortunately, your body breaking down. What did I say? Biological breakdowns with Joel Embiid. Porzingis, he's on that list too. You know what I mean? But anyway, and then as far as Dinwiddie is concerned, there were some reports there that things weren't really working out in DC for him, and that, he himself made a really interesting comment a few weeks ago saying that something like, people around here, like he wore out his welcome because he was too outspoken or whatever he said, not direct quotes. But the point is, we knew that there were issues with each of these two, but I think really what it was is the trade doesn't really make that much sense for either team from a basketball standpoint, in my opinion. Maybe it makes more sense for the Wizards, but when you think about the emergence of Kyle Kuzma and what he's shown this season, the Wizards also moved on from Montrezl Harrell too, which was also interesting. But Bradley Beal shutting it down for the rest of the season, at that point, I would kind of think, I shouldn't say shutting it down, I'm sorry, Bradley Beal having surgery, which ended his season. If you're Washington now, you're thinking about the lottery, right? Getting Porzingis in there and giving minutes to Porzingis, it's going to help you win games. So the question then becomes, okay, are you building around Porzingis now with Kyle Kuzma? Are you hoping to keep Bradley Beal there? There's just so many questions about what that team is going to look like and what they're going to become in the future, and whether or not Porzingis, who still has a couple of years and a lot of dollars attached to him, whether he fits there long term. It kind of looks like they just traded one problem for the other, DC and Dallas. Because in Dallas now, Jalen Brunson, who has opened a lot of eyes this season.
Oh, yeah.
He's coming up on restricted free agency. And the question is, well, how does Spencer Dinwiddie fit in there long term with that team, And if they held on until the summertime, could they have found another taker, both Dallas and DC? You know what I mean? Like, they both had issues that they wanted to get rid of, and they traded them to one another. But I don't know that either of those players solves an issue for either one of those teams. So that's why I was really curious for me.
Which is interesting, right? Because maybe that's what it tells you, is that they just wanted to get off of these problems so badly. Like, in a way, that's how I look at it, right? Like, Dallas just wanted to get off of Porzingis so bad. They're like, this isn't working. And the same for the Wizards. They were like, Bertans has not been what we thought since we signed him 2 off seasons ago. Dinwiddie doesn't seem to be fitting in here. Yeah, I'm not sure. And you brought up, it brings up a lot of questions for these teams. I'm not sure what the next moves are.
Exactly. Where are they going?
Where are they going for this? Right. Like, and one thing with Dallas, like, I think you could at least see with the Wizards, they might want to pair Beal and Porzingis if Beal stays. And extends. That would be interesting. But with Dallas, it's like, okay, you've got Luka, you got some secondary ball handlers, but you don't got much there. I really don't know what they're doing there. They're hitting the reset button clearly, but we'll see. It'll be interesting. The Celtics, they did a couple of moves yesterday. They sent Dennis Schroder to the Rockets in a 4-player deal. This was kind of expected. You're shaking your head. This was kind of expected because we knew the Celtics couldn't hang on to Schroder. They weren't going to be able to re-sign him next year. What do you think about what the Celtics did yesterday? I know they also got Derek White from the Spurs. What do you think about what they did? You're shaking your head. So do you think this is not good enough, or much to do about nothing with the Celtics?
Well, no, I was shaking my head about Dennis Schroder, because when you talk about
losing that bag, yeah, man, yeah.
I mean, just off the top of my head, I think about DeMarcus Cousins as definitely a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about DeMarcus, he was offered an extension from New Orleans. They were the Pelicans. He was offered an extension from the Pelicans. I want to say it was maybe something like 3 years, about $20 million a year, 2025, something like that. He was at a time the best big man in the game, before all the injuries. So you can't really blame him that much for thinking that he could do better on the open market. And then he just had the bad fortune of rupturing his Achilles tendon, and that obviously destroyed his market value. Dennis Schroder, on the other hand, man, I don't know why he thought that he was going to be able to get more than $20 million a year, which is essentially what $21 million a year, which is essentially what the Lakers offered him. But anyway, not to really rehash that too much. I actually, Dexter, on basketballnews.com, hot off the presses, I actually just had published my 10 most likely candidates for buyouts, and Dennis Schroder, he made the cut, right? In Houston, Schroder, he's on the books now. He was on the books this season for $5.9 million from Boston. More than 50% of that salary has been paid. So he has about, $2.5 million left due to him for the remainder of this season. If he tells the Rockets that he's willing to, give him a $500,000 discount on it or whatever, they'll probably set him free just because Houston, they're rebuilding. They have turned that offense over to Kevin Porter. They're turning that offense over to Jalen Green, right? Schroeder doesn't really seem to fit there on that team long term. And for him to reestablish his market value, he needs to go to a contending situation. He needs to go to a team like a Utah Jazz or, dare I say, a Los Angeles Lakers. How you like that irony? He needs to go to a situation like that and either help a team that's on the outside looking in right now get into the playoffs and or make a deep run in the playoffs. And I think that's really going to be the primary motivation for him. As far as Boston is concerned, they were pretty busy. They brought Daniel Tice back, and they also got Derek White. I think White is one of the more underrated players. I would probably say definitely in the Western Conference. He's a very underrated player. He fills up the stat sheet is really what I want to say about him. He's one of those guys that in few minutes, he can give you 16 points pretty easily. He can keep the floor spaced for you. He rebounds the ball. He can see the floor. He'll find his teammates. Like, he just gives you a lot. And in Boston, as a sixth man, as a seventh man, I don't really know where he's going to fit in the rotation for Ime Udoka, but he will help that team. So I like the moves for Boston. Schroeder did not seem like he was a long-term fit there. And now they have Derek White, someone who I think is ascending, who I think will help this team moving forward. So I like it for them.
All right, good moves for Boston. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I almost didn't even think about Schroeder as a buyout candidate, but he absolutely should be at the top of the list. And if he ends up back with the Lakers, that would be hilarious.
It would be very funny.
It would be very funny.
Because they'd be paying him about $1.5 million,
Yeah, yes. when he had a extension on the table and did not take it. Ibaka, Serge Ibaka. I thought this was a move. He went to the Bucks with Bagley and the Pistons in a 14 deal. There was a lot of moving parts here. Ibaka goes to the Bucks. Dante DiVincenzo goes to where did DiVincenzo end up? Sorry, it's escaped my mind right now. He went to Sacramento, and Bagley went to the Pistons. So you had that movement going on. What did you think about this for the Bucks without Brook Lopez, who they need another center to sort of help? Although their lineups with Giannis at the 5 have been really good. What did you think about this move for the Bucks to get Serge Ibaka?
I like it. So Pat Connaughton, he broke. What did he break? He broke his hand, I want to say, Thursday night. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So it was somewhat unfortunate for Milwaukee because, DiVincenzo, he could help soak up some of those minutes that are now going to be created now that they're going to be without one of their top rotation guys. As far as Ibaka is concerned, Serge, I think we're still trying to see if Serge can be the player that became renowned as the Surge Protector, right? Low key, one of the best nicknames. I mean, the play on words there is just absolutely magnificent. So Surge Protector, but Serge, Serge is coming off of back surgery. He's played sparingly for the Clippers this season, though he has shown some signs over the past couple of weeks, I would say. So really for Milwaukee, it's a matter of buying low on a guy who, if he is, 75% of the player that we last remember, will help them immensely. He and Bobby Portis, they have similar gifts. I think Bobby Portis, who's emerged as the starter now in Milwaukee in Brook Lopez's absence, Portis is shooting about 41% from behind the three this season, which has just opened up everything for that offense. So he's definitely been a revelation. Ibaka has a lot of the same gifts as Bobby Portis when Ibaka is healthy. So again, we were talking about ceilings with Philadelphia. I would say the same exact thing with Milwaukee. You're thinking about it from a ceiling standpoint. For the relatively low cost of DiVincenzo, he himself missed he's been out for a really long time. He just recently came back to the lineup after going down in the playoffs for that team. So they basically got through the first half of the season without him anyway. Grayson Allen emerging there as a key member of their rotation. DiVincenzo was kind of a spare part that they end up flipping for Ibaka, who again, if he can be what he was, he's going to fill a bigger need for that team than DiVincenzo was, at least at the time they made that trade. So I like the trade for Milwaukee. It makes them much, much stronger. And I think right now they're still my favorite in the Eastern Conference, even after a deadline day that saw a flurry of moves made. I think Milwaukee got stronger.
I think that's fair to say about Milwaukee. Another small deal, but could have some impact. I thought Thaddeus Young would have gone someplace else, but the Raptors acquired Thaddeus Young from the Spurs. They sent Dragic out with his $19.5 million expiring contract. He's a top buyout candidate. I assume you wrote about him too. He's one of the top buyout candidates.
He made the cut. He made the cut.
Yeah. Okay, he made the cut. Some people reporting Dallas could be the favorite to sign him, although I'm like, damn, they need another ball handler. But that was before they got Spencer Dinwiddie. So that would be interesting. What did you think about this deal for the Raptors? They get a veteran presence, a guy who adds some length. What did you think about this for them? They've really impressed in the Eastern Conference this season.
Yeah, I mean, I feel similarly about this as I feel, I guess, about the Ben Simmons trade and even about the Bucks trade. We're just talking about Dante DiVincenzo. Thaddeus Young, he and the Spurs organization, like, they're just in different places, And Thad Young, actually, for basketballnews.com earlier this season, our Alex Kennedy had an exclusive interview with Thad Young, so I encourage you guys to go check it out. I'm not too proud to give myself them shameless plugs there, Dexter. As long as I could weave it in smoothly.
Hey, listen, man. Listen, this is why we're here. We announce what you do. People are here to see your work and what you do. So please plug away, man. Ain't nothing wrong with that at all. There we go.
My man. No, but as far as Thad is concerned, earlier this season, he himself, he pretty much said that San Antonio was just not an ideal situation for him. Right now, if you look at Greg Popovich's rotations, it seems pretty obvious to me that he's literally saying, like, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be giving these minutes to these guys. And now for these 2 weeks, I'm going to be giving it to these guys. His rotations and the guys that are getting plays called for them and the guys that are getting the on-ball repetitions and opportunities, it's changing. Because in San Antonio, they're literally trying to figure out, aside from Dejounte Murray, they're trying to figure out what they have. They're trying to figure out who they can build around and who are going to be the pieces that will actually help them get back into the playoffs at some point. And Thaddeus Young just did not fit in with that situation. And everybody knew it. And it was really just a matter of time before either he was bought out or he himself was traded. Obviously, he was traded. Obviously, now he's landing in Toronto. In Toronto, Dragic was acquired from those. He was acquired by the Raptors in the sign and trade that sent Kyle Lowry to Miami. And since Goran landed in Toronto, everybody knew that he had no future there. He's played sparingly for them this season at best. And it was just a matter of, again, are we going to trade this guy at the deadline and get something in return for him? Or are we just going to buy him out, let him go about his business, and let him go sign with his buddy and his countryman in Luka Doncic in Dallas? So, it wasn't really a surprise at all. Like, both teams needed to make this move for different reasons. San Antonio obviously gets a couple of assets for their trouble in the whole situation, and Toronto gets another front court player to help them, insurance more or less in case Pascal Siakam or one of their other guys in the front line goes down for an extended period of time. But even if not, Thad Young is a proven pro, someone who's going to impact the game for you, and someone that will make the most out of the 15 to 20 minutes that he's given a night. So I like the trade for both teams. I'm happy for both Thaddeus Young and Goran. I think both of them needed to change. And now, again, as you said, Dexter, I would think that Dragic is going to end up getting bought out. And, I think that there will be at least 3 or 4 teams that will be interested in him, a veteran point guard who's had success in the playoffs, who in those tough moments can get you through, a 4 or 5 minute stretch where you need some buckets and, need some astute play calling. So I think it's a good trade for both teams.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a good one. Let's talk about some teams who didn't make deals. There were no deals for the teams, 2 of the biggest teams in the league in the biggest markets, the Lakers and the Knicks.
I saw the smirk on your face as soon as you said teams that did. I saw the smirk and I'm like, oh, he knows that I'm coming for him now.
Well, coming for me, that makes you. Did you think that I wanted the Knicks to make a deal here? Is that what you're thinking?
Come on, man. Everybody wanted the Knicks to make a deal. Everybody wanted something to happen in New York, man.
Everybody wants that. And I was of the thought of, if you could, where they are right now, if you could unload some of these veterans. Let's make a couple things clear. The Knicks had more. The Knicks had
serious
more,
now.
The Knicks, the Lakers. The Lakers. Let's go with the Lakers first. The Lakers had no ability to really make much moves, right? They really don't have a lot that's desirable there. Maybe THT, maybe their 2027 first round pick. The Knicks could have made some moves, I think, for the right price if they could have got off some veterans. Maybe Alec Burks. I'm surprised they weren't able to trade him, or nobody wanted him. I thought he was a perfect fit to go back to Utah. And maybe they took Joe Ingles' expiring contract and a pick, whatever. The Knicks, New Orleans, there were some guys I think the Knicks could have sold off, but I don't know if there was anybody out there the Knicks could have acquired that would have turned their season around. I don't think that was happening, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I was fine. They made a small move before the deadline with Cam Reddish. I think we talked about that the last time you were here. Or it was after that. They made a small move for getting Cam Reddish. Thought that was fine. Now the thing is, are you going to play Cam Reddish? That's really the real question here. I wasn't as stunned as neither of these teams making moves. Some people. Were you shocked or were you bothered? Do you think the Knicks should have made moves? I mean, you said everybody in New York was expecting it, but what did you think, Paul?
I was disappointed. I think that's probably the most fair way to characterize it. I was disappointed for both the Lakers and the Knicks, and part of the reason why is because it's funny that these teams they're in very similar situations. They both came into the season with pretty high hopes and expectations, and the Lakers obviously with all the star power, but. Dexter, when you're the Knicks and you're the 4th seed and you come into the season with Kemba Walker with the homecoming, and the big acquisition of Evan Fournier, the expectations were there for them to at least be a playoff team. I wouldn't say that I expected them to be the 4th seed again, but I didn't think that they would be 12th. I didn't think that they would not make the play-in. So when you enter deadline day 24 and 31 and you have such a disappointing first half of the season, quote unquote half, you kind of want to do something. At the same time, though, I do agree, and I can appreciate that, am I going to attach a first round pick to Alec Burks? Of course, there's no way that I would do something like that because Alec Burks is a good player. He's someone that you literally just wouldn't mind moving out so that you can clear some rotation space for some of your younger guys like Emmanuel Quickley or Quentin Grimes or Cam Reddish. So I'm with you there. I think, and as far as the Lakers are concerned, I basically feel the same way. There was a report out there that the Lakers could have traded Russell Westbrook for John Wall if they attached their first round pick. I mean, I don't think I'm doing that if I'm the Lakers either. But you can't be a fan of the teams and see the first half of the season go by and be happy not doing anything on deadline day. It's impossible for you to feel that way. That said, though, Dexter, I will say this as it relates to the Knicks, okay? They beat the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco on deadline day. And what does happen sometimes in the NBA is guys, maybe Julius Randle is one of them, maybe Alec Burks, you can kind of go down the list. When players think that they're going to be traded, or if they know that teams are calling about them, or if they know that their team is fielding calls about them, they're human. It impacts them. It can affect them. It can affect their play on the court. And I think generally as a basketball viewing public, we don't think about the emotional part of the game. We look at players as being superheroes, right? They walk around, they're 7 feet tall. We're looking up at them in awe, but we forget that they're humans, right? They have feelings as well. Sometimes those distractions and those concerns cause players to not play well. Conversely, when the trade deadline passes, everybody exhales and everybody breathes a sigh of relief, and everybody moves on mentally and emotionally past the potential of them being traded, because now they know this is where they're going to be for the remainder of the season. A lot of teams and a lot of players tend to play better in those situations and those scenarios. And I think as a Knicks fan, you saw that on Thursday night itself. The team seemed to play a lot looser, a lot freer. And let's not forget that they happened to beat the Warriors without R.J. Barrett, who's nursing a sprained ankle, who was not in the lineup for that game.
Are you saying, Mr. Moke Hamilton,
Ah.
are you saying the Knicks turnaround is coming post the All-Star break? Is that what you are saying? I think some Knicks fans watching or listening might hear that.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I'm not saying a damn thing. But
no, I was telling you. I was telling that positive energy that you were coming with.
Okay.
There's a chance. There's a chance. Look, you can't see what Julius Randle has done over the course of this West Coast road trip so far and think that there's no chances the Knicks are going to be able to fight their way back into it. Like, if he plays like that, and if he's able to give you the type of efficiency that he's given you over the past 4 games, then the Knicks, if he'd been doing that all season long, there would be such a different conversation about the Knicks. So the point is, if this team can re-engage and if this team can refocus now after the trade deadline, then yeah, there's definitely a chance they can get in. One of the things about the Eastern Conference this season, Dexter, things are very, very crunched. There's a lot of parity there. You go on a 5-game win streak, you win 8 out of 10 games or what have you. And look at the Nets, right? The Nets were first in the conference. They're losing streak now. They enter play 8th today, I want to say. Same exact thing with the Knicks, right? They put together a stretch where they go 7-3, 8-2. They can find themselves right back in the thick of things. And again, I think Thursday night's win over the Warriors was a positive sign.
That was a positive sign. I'll get the Knicks.
For the Lakers, they're just saying no hope. Let's just get that.
I was going to ask you about that. No hope.
No,
no hope at all.
They got no. I mean, I'm joking. When you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, there's always a chance. But I mean, something has to give here. Russell Westbrook and Frank Vogel, at a minimum, have to make peace with each other. I think it's obvious that there's negative vibrations in that relationship and in that locker room. And a lot of it is on Russell Westbrook. Westbrook needs to understand what it took Carmelo Anthony a little time to realize. And it's that when you're at the stage of your career, when you can no longer do the things that you did 5 years ago or 3 years ago, you have to change and evolve as a player. And I think that's the biggest thing about Russell Westbrook. He's no longer at a place where he can dominate and impose his will from a physical standpoint for 42 minutes and lead a team to a win. And he doesn't need to do that when he has LeBron James and Anthony Davis flanking him. So Westbrook needs to come to that realization, and he needs to just learn how to play a different brand of basketball if it's even possible. And he also does need to embrace being more of a captain for the reserve unit. Not to say he has to come off the bench and can't be a starter anymore, but if I'm Frank Vogel, most of the minutes that I give Westbrook would probably be with my reserves so that he can try to be the dominant scorer that he seems to want to be on that team. Whether he can is another story, but I guess the bottom line for me is that the Westbrook-Vogel dynamic, I think, is the first thing that needs to change for that team. Then aside from that, I think they just need their guys to just play better, kind of like the Knicks do, and hope that they have a better second half of the season.
Yeah, also we'll see what happens with both of those teams. To wrap this up real quick before we let you go, who were the biggest winners and losers of this trade deadline season? This trade season overall. Who comes away the biggest winner? Is it the Nets? Is it the Sixers? Is there other teams you think that won big here or lost big? Who are the biggest winners and losers?
I mean, if I had to pick one, based on what we know, well, you know what? I kind of want to just say to be continued, Dexter, to be honest with you, because there are just so many ifs, right? Like if Serge Ibaka can be who we think he can be, then you could say the Milwaukee Bucks. If James Harden is the Harden that we saw in Houston or the Harden that we saw last season in February and March for Brooklyn, then we would say Philly. If Ben Simmons comes back and he got a little shake in his game and a 12-foot jump shot like my man Larry Johnson, then we're going to say Brooklyn. You know what I mean? But all things considered, if you're asking me to make a prediction about which one of those things are going to happen, I would go with Philly. I do think you're going to see a re-energized and a re-engaged James Harden. And with Joel Embiid, I think Harden is going to, he smells that he can win a championship with this guy. Did he smell it in Brooklyn last year? Yeah, I think he did. Is that why he played such great basketball? Yeah, it probably is. The hamstring, how serious of an issue that continues to be for him. Obviously, it's going to play a major role in how far the Sixers are able to go. But they gave up Ben Simmons, who wasn't playing for them. They come away with James Harden. I think it's hard to argue that Philly is not the biggest winner. I would say that the Nets are second.
Okay, I can rock with that. Philly and the Nets, they made the trade for each other. Biggest winners and losers of the trade deadline. It was an exciting trade deadline. You need to get some rest. I need to get some rest. It was a busy one, but you know what? We're going to be busy when it comes to the end of the season and free agency. We're going to be doing this again.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
You're looking forward to it? All right. I'm looking forward to it, too.
It's what we do, man. I'm honored to get the callbacks from you, brother.
I told you, man. You are now up in the leaderboard of appearances on the show. You were the first guest, so you have a very distinct honor. And now you've moved up. I believe this is your third time on the show. I believe you are tied for the all-time lead in appearances on the NBA Exchange.
Look at that. Well, take that, Ian Bagley. Take that, Howard Beck. How you like them? Ian and Howard have actually only been on here one time. So those are both my man. Those are both my mans.
Yes.
We got that New York connection. So I figured I would shout out to my guys. What about Brian? How many times do you have Brian on?
Brian has been on here, not counting when I think 3 times counting. He was on the live show yesterday for the trade deadline.
Right.
He's been on once by himself. Yeah.
So we got to see who gets that fourth. Who gets the fourth?
That fourth. I don't think
we're gonna see where your heart really lies, Dexter.
Yeah, nobody's been on here 4 times by themselves, other than Gerard, who joins me every week. Nobody's been on here 4 times as a solo guest for sure. So, I mean, it's coming. You might get that call back sooner than you think. You know what I mean?
Right.
It might happen. You'll be waiting.
Always got the jack right here, man.
Always got the jack right there, ready to go.
Wait with bated breath.
I like that. That is Moke Hamilton. You can catch his work at basketballnews.com. They do a fantastic job at that site, people. Seriously. Check out the work. Alex Kennedy, Moke Hamilton. Brian also does some writing for basketballnews.com. List of others. They do fantastic work. Check out Moke's recent piece on who are the top buyout candidates. Really good to see on that, and definitely check that out. Moke, you got some other great work coming out. I know you will. Always good to see you, brother. We are going to take a quick break on the show. When we come back, I'll be giving y'all my NBA picks. Later, y'all. Are you looking for a better way to play player props or daily fantasy sports? Well, look no further than Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the leading over-under daily fantasy game. Why? Because it's so easy to use and win. You can make your picks in under 30 seconds and win up to 10 times your money in one day. Right now, we have a special offer for our viewers and listeners of the NBA Exchange. All you got to do is sign up now and use the promo code NBAEX. Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Yep, That's right. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. So join the over 150,000 others who found a better way to play and download the PrizePicks app today. That's right. Use PrizePicks. That's our partners. Use that NBA promo code NBAEX. They said put your first deposit down. That match up to $100. We're going to be talking some more PrizePicks and giving you some great props on the show coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll be talking a little about that. I'll be trying to give you guys my prop of the day, over under the day, things you should look at for that. So we'll be doing that a little bit more. But this is the time of the show where we close and we talk about NBA picks. And got some games tonight. Now, look, I am somebody who generally says, sometimes you got to stay away from the really large spreads. But one of my sort of rule of thumbs when it comes to betting large spreads is you want to hedge it if you can using some alternative spreads. So if there's a really large spread, maybe take the money on the large spread that you'll see. The large spreads, I talk about anything probably over 9.5. You're talking about there. You're looking for somebody to smack another team, blow them out. You can hedge it in a couple ways. You can hedge it by taking alternative spread that's a little bit lower than that, maybe taking one that's higher than that, especially if you think it really could be a blowout. Like we're talking about 16 points or more, possibly there. There's a couple ways you can play it. But one of the things I like to look at is, am I getting a team that's probably a top 5 team in the league versus a bottom 5 team in the league? If you see that and you get the spread, and especially if the team's not coming off a back-to-back, that's the favorite there, okay, maybe you want to bang that and take that in the spread. Sometimes also look at sometimes when spreads may be high, maybe there's a team that has the want to win. Maybe they're on a losing streak, they need to bounce back, and they're playing a bad team, and they think that is. Now, the latter situation I mentioned is what actually will happen in the first game I'm going to talk about tonight. So the first game I have tonight is the Charlotte Hornets. They are in Detroit in the Motor City. They will be taking on the Detroit Pistons. The Hornets are 7-point favorites here, okay? And the Pistons, they've been terrible record right now. Now, both teams have lost 6 games in a row. The Hornets have lost 6 games in a row. They've been slipping. They were once in the playoffs. They are now back in the play-in. They're sitting at 9th in the Eastern Conference at 28-28. As I said, they've lost 6 games in a row, 2-8 in their last 10. Detroit, we know how bad they are. They have the worst record in the league at 12-43. They have also lost 6 games in a row. They're 1-9 in their last 10. But look, I think we can all agree on something here. Hornets are the better team. They've been sliding. They need a win. They've lost some tough games, but they absolutely need a win. After the deadline, they just got Montrezl Harrell. He probably will not play tonight, but that should reinvigorate some juice into that team. You heard Moke talk about this earlier, about how players are a little bit more relaxed after the deadline. I think this is a performance where you get a good one out of the Charlotte Hornets right here. I think they come here into Detroit in the Motor City and give a nice old-fashioned beatdown. The line is 7. This is a good one. I love to take this one. I think it's a good one. I don't even think you need to hedge on this. Throw some dollars down on the Hornets to cover here. 7-point favorites on the road. I see this as the blowout. Hornets are motivated. I think they know this is a game they have to get, and I think they will get. So I like the Hornets here over the Pistons. Now, another game, bigger line. I started with the lowest line of my 3 games tonight. And these will all get bigger as we go up. The next game, Oklahoma City Thunder. They are on the road to take on, we talked about this team a lot on the show, the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers are 12.5-point favorites. If you're wondering if the line is that big, because James Harden will be there, James Harden, very unlikely to play, probably wouldn't clear the physical and all before tonight's game. Keep your eye on that, because that could go up if he did play. I don't think it's very likely that he will. He'll probably play in their next game. But look, the Sixers, even though Seth Curry is out, there's no Andre Drummond. They are on their way to Brooklyn. The Sixers have enough. Joel Embiid is playing at an MVP-type level right now. Might be some people's pick for the MVP already. Oklahoma City, they just got stomped the other night by the Toronto Raptors. They don't have much to play for at all whatsoever. I think this is easily a beatdown. Now, 12.5 is a lot. It's right at that territory where I'm like, is this going to do? And the Sixers are a good but not great offensive team. But I, too, think that now the Ben Simmons drama is over. They're rejuvenated and revitalized. They know they don't have to answer questions about Simmons anymore. They could talk about Harden coming in here. I think these guys are going to be motivated. They're at home, front of the home crowd, who's going to be happy that Ben Simmons is out of there. Nope, can't wait till Ben Simmons comes back to play in Philadelphia. That will be interesting. But I will take this. I am not as bullish on this one as I was on the Hornets, but I throw some dollars on the Sixers to cover the minus 12.5. You don't like this? Maybe drop this down a couple more points. Maybe go to minus 8.5, minus 9.5 in an alternative spread to see that. But I see the Sixers winning here, and I think you can get some decent value at the minus 12.5. Not bad idea to throw a couple dollars on it with the Sixers here. Now, the last game, it's another matchup. The Utah Jazz, they've been playing some good ball lately. They're at home. They're hosting the Orlando Magic. Not a good team. They're 13.5-point favorites. What's been impressive with the Jazz is even in some games without Rudy Gobert, their defense has looked really good. I think they are also probably having some relief that the trade deadline is over. Now, I don't think the Jazz did enough. I thought they should have added maybe another wing defender / scorer like Alec Burks that I mentioned earlier in the show. But look, one thing I think they are is they're better than the Orlando Magic. My only concern with them in this game is the Orlando Magic. They do have some size with Wendell Carter Jr., with Mo Bamba. If Rudy Gobert is not a go, this could be tough. Keep an eye on that. But the Jazz have been playing well and confidently, and I think they will come out at home again and have another strong showing against the Orlando Magic. This is one I wouldn't go too hard on, but I'd throw a couple dollars. Minus 13.5. Again, that's a pretty big number. But this is a Jazz team that we know can space the ball. They can shoot. Orlando Magic are one of the worst teams on offense in the league. So you don't expect them to be able to score as much, especially playing in Utah, a very tough place to play. Give me the Jazz to cover against the Magic, 13.5 points. Again, this is another one I'll caution too. If you think the 13.5 is too rich for you, a little bit too high, you don't think they'll cover, you're a little bit nervous about what may happen at the end of the game, drop it down. Look for that alternative spread, maybe get down to about 9.5, 10.5 points, still get some decent value, throw some dollars down in there and win yourself some money. So I love the pick, the Hornets over the Pistons. That's my lock of the night. Give me the Hornets over the Pistons on the road, -7. I think that's a fantastic pick. Give me the Sixers at home, favored -12.5 over Oklahoma City Thunder. And then also give me the not Sixers, give me the Jazz at home, -13.5 over the Atlanta Magic. So not something I usually play, but you got the big spreads here. You got to go in. Sometimes you get some of that with these teams that you think can blow somebody out, get some good value. You never know. Got to go for that. Thank y'all for supporting. We started a little bit late with the show today. It was a busy week of NBA basketball with the trade deadline. Next week, we'll have a little bit to talk about as we head into the All-Star break and around that. And if anybody's excited about that, we saw the draft of the teams last night between LeBron and KD, with KD skipping over picking James Harden, which I think that was kind of predictable there. We didn't expect that to happen at all. So we'll have that to talk about if anybody's excited for All-Star Weekend. So Monday, we will have another show. We'll try to get somebody to talk maybe from the side of the Sixers and the Nets and how they're adjusting to their new players. Hopefully we'll have somebody to talk about that. Also, Wednesday, we'll talk with Gerard Hector next week, NBA with Nuance. I'm sure we'll have some good stuff to talk about the All-Star game. We talked a couple weeks ago about them changing the Rising Stars format. There seems to be a lot of talk about trying to garner and generate interest around the All-Star game and All-Star weekend. There's been a lot of tweaks, so there's a lot of things that we could talk about then. But overall, I think this was a very interesting, exciting NBA trade deadline. I think there's a lot of good things to watch here in the second half of the season. The buyout market is the next thing we should be keeping our eye on. Moke talked about that. Again, check out his article on basketballnews.com. That's the thing we're going to be watching very closely. What teams can add, what teams need help, who can do more, can the Lakers do anything? Are there teams that can make a second half run? Are you fine with the teams that stood pat? Let us know what you think in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter. Follow NBA Exchange as usual, always on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you like to get our content. So we will be back next week. I'm hoping to have a relaxing weekend where I can decompress from all this NBA trade talk. I'm Dexter Henry. I'll see y'all next week. Enjoy the weekend as usual. Enjoy the basketball. And until next time, y'all, peace.